Hello folks, and welcome to another unnecessarily sexy episode of the Audiophile Man. And what do we have for you this time around? A digital audio player. That's what we've got for you. Sitting within the company's 200 range of digital audio players, or DAP as I'm going to call them from now on. So you've seen probably somewhere around the DX220, the DX240. Well, this is the DX260, what's known as mid-range DAP. Mid-range to the dedicated digital audio player fanatic, at least. For everyone else, it's a high-end unit priced at £849. Now, I'm calling this company iBASSO, as in the fish. And I'm saying that under advisement from the UK distributor. Now, I've heard both iBASSO and iBASSO, as in the drum, but I'm swimming with the fish on this one. I also hope the performance of this one is off the scale. Ha! Even so, there's a lot of tech packed into the chassis that spans around 123mm by 75 by 175mm and weighing in at 229 grams. So this one is weighty without resembling a brick in dead weight terms. The chassis feels solid. It feels well built. It feels like the price point, which is at least encouraging. In terms of fit, well, I have large hands and the chassis feels comfortable in my mitts at least. But if you've got small hands, the DX260 might feel a little bit cumbersome, perhaps with those sharp corners especially. And if you have small hands, it may feel a little bit unwieldy, especially when compared to more portrait designs like the ASTEL&KERN Kann Alpha. This DAP booted straight into the Android OS screen. Now, I am reliably told this is the increasingly common approach in new DAP designs, but this decision is a bad decision, in my opinion. What I didn't know was that I had to tell the DAP to boot from the included Mango music player app. That's the principal app that the DX200 use. It's this app called Mango. Now look, this is not a phone or a laptop, and with either of those devices, then yes, you would expect to go straight into the OS itself, wouldn't you? But this is a DAP, a specialist device. So what you really want to do is to be booted straight into the music playing app. This is Android. Android is full of apps. You play music from an app, so you should go straight through to the music playing app. At least I think so. Now, what I didn't know, and I had to fumble around and find out for myself, was that you had to soft boot the DX200 straight into the Mango music player app, and all would be well. Now, I must emphasize there is no documentation telling you about all of this. No documentation tells you of the requirements or how to go about it in the box or online. Well, I scoured the online user guide and that didn't help, despite it spanning, 40-50 pages or so. So I grew increasingly frustrated until I stumbled on the Boot DAP with Mango or similar option in a menu. Now I know, well, it's obvious, isn't it? Problem is, hindsight is a wonderful place to live, but iBASSO should assume that not everyone knows about the Mango boot thing. And I get the feeling that's what they're doing, assuming. Apple, for example, never assumes when it addresses its UI. Assuming is a shortcut to annoying your customer base. It certainly annoyed this customer. Once I could boot the DAP straight into Mango, I was as happy as Larry, but until then, I was a bear with a sore head. So I highly recommend to iBASSO and any distributor of this DAP, please create and insert into the box a brief quick start guide and tell people all about it. This is a priority edition and it should be included now. Now, some of you might say, well, it's Android, you can access your apps, etc., etc. To repeat for a third time, this is not a laptop, it's not a phone, it is a specialist device. It's a DAP. So if you want to access Android later on and you want to mess around with apps, then fine. But you should jump through hoops to get to that OS screen. Okay, mini rant, mini, major, I don't know. It was a rant anyway. Rant is over. Let's get to the tech and the tools. Now this DAP is run on a Snapdragon 660 CPU. Now iBASSO doesn't tell you, but I think the actual chip runs at 2.2 gigahertz as a speed rating. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. You also get 4 gigabytes of RAM and 64 gigabytes of ROM, and that drives the Android 11, because that's what we're using here, folks, Android 11 OS, plus that built-in Mango music player. Now, you won't told this, but I did ask iBASSO about the internal storage. Now, according to iBASSO, part of the ROM, that's 64 gigs, is devoted to the OS, but most of it is spare, and there you can store your music internally. In addition to that, you can store your music kind of externally via a micro SD card slot, and that'll take up to 2 terabytes capacity. Now, apparently Mango, the lovely app, helps the audio to avoid Android's desperate need to resample the audio itself, providing a more direct and purer line from the audio to your ear. Now, there isn't a great deal of info about this issue and how it's solved in and around the documentation that I could see. So I put the question to iBASSO and I asked them what's going on and how are you addressing it and why and all that jazz. And they said, and I quote, when using the native Android OS, the sound quality may be compromised as all signals are resampled to 16-bit 48 kilohertz. Our player ensures that this doesn't happen. Our players offer high sample rate output for an exceptional audio experience. So there you are from the horse's mouth. Now, the headline feature of this DAP is the octa-core DAC. That is, the DX260 packs in not 1, not 2, not 4, not 27, but 8 CX43198 DACs. This is the low power design from Cirrus Logic. Now, whenever I see anyone list, talk or review this particular device about the octa-core format, no one questions it. Why 8 cores, I wondered? Is that a good thing? Because more tech isn't always a good thing. Should 8 cores be better than 4 or 2 or even 1? No one talks about this. No one addresses this point. So once more, I talked to iBASSO and I said to them, what's going on with this 8-core malarkey? And they said, on the DX260, there are 4 DAC chipsets on the left channel and 4 DAC chipsets on the right channel. And I'm going to let you read the rest of their reply here while I give you some more information. It's all happening, folks. So this DAC generally supports files up to 24-bit 384 kilohertz or DSD128. To be honest, I would have expected DSD256 minimum in this day and age, and for this price, I have to say. But even so, 128 is okay. The iBASSO also supports Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, Bluetooth 5.0 exactly. And again, we have a bit of a sinkhole in terms of information because I wanted to know what Bluetooth codecs the DX260 supported. I wasn't really seeing any information anywhere on the internet. Again, no one was talking about this. No one was giving the information. So once more, I went back. It's becoming a regular thing, isn't it? I went back to iBASSO, knocked on their door, apologized for asking yet more questions, and I said to them, tell me about your Bluetooth codecs, please. And before they set the dogs on me, they said this, that apparently when the DX260 works as a Bluetooth transmitter, it supports aptX, aptX HD, LDAC, AAC, and SBC. But when the DX260 works as a Bluetooth DAC, it supports AAC and SBC only. Now you control all of this via a sharp 5-inch capacitive IPS screen. Resolution is 1080 by 1920, and the panel offers good contrast, good resolution, and it was easy to see in varying lights. Battery life is around 14 hours. It takes you about 2.5 hours to charge to full capacity, and you do that through the USB-C port, which is fine. And while we're talking about ports, other ports include, well, I did mention the mini SD card slot, didn't I? There's also an SP-DIF port, and there are two outputs. You get a single-ended 3.5mm plus a very welcome balanced port, 4.4mm Pentacom. Both, as I say, are welcome. Being greedy, as I am, I would have liked to have seen a 6.35mm single-ended option. Okay, it's not a universal thing. Some people have it, others don't. But I would have liked to have seen it, and there's room on the chassis, so you could have had it. Now, down the right-hand side are 3 music transport buttons positioned in a diagonal configuration, handling previous rewind and play pause, and next fast forward. Again, I was a little bit disappointed as to what button did what. There was no visual indicators, and I kind of missed that. Also on the right is a wheel, a rotary wheel, and that could be pressed in as well to select commands. This is operated easily via the thumb. I really loved this wheel, which offered the first real intuitive tool on the entire DAP. Oh, and I must add that you are also provided with a plastic protective case, coax and charging cables, plus a collection of 3 screen protectors. Oh, and a couple of extra pointers regarding software. There are 5 user selectable filters on offer here, and I use the NOS filter, which is non-oversampling, which I found more of a natural listen. There are 2 slow-based filters, which are good, but possibly a little accentuated in the bass regions, and there are 2 fast filters that I disliked, and they tended to emphasize the higher frequencies, sounding a little bit edgy, kinda. Well, I say edgy. All 4 of these filters were rather subtle in their approach, but I found the NOS preferable. There are 3 gain settings depending on your headphones or IEM selection, and gapless play is an option here, so you get that, so don't worry about that if that's what you're after. There's also an equalizer, which I avoided like the plague, because I want to hear this DAP as is. This is an expensive machine. It's an expensive DAP. If it can't provide a top quality sound feedback in its default form, and I have to use software EQ to get that, then why am I spending £850 on this thing? So no, EQ was off for this test. And that's it, folks, in terms of the techie side and all that jazz. How does this thing sound? That's the killer question, isn't it? That's the $64,000 question, as they used to say. Well, let's go to the sound quality tests and we'll find out. And welcome to the sound quality tests for the iBASSO DX260 digital audio player. Now, when I see reviews of DAPs out there in the wild, I often see sonic references derived from other recently released hardware. So, for example, if someone was reviewing the DX260, you'd normally see a reference to compare it with, which may have only been out a few months on its own, or maybe a year ago, which is still not a long time. Now, that's pretty useless if you're not the type of person who changes their DAP every year, or you don't collect shiny things off the back of a large bank balance. Most people, I would humbly suggest, buy a new DAP after several years have passed and when they've saved the cash, which is why I'll be using old and new hardware in the sound tests as reference. So, to begin with, I started with an old AK120 DAP from ASTEL&KERN, which was released, for what, 9 years ago, at least in the UK. So if you are running a DAP of comparable age, it's reasonable to suggest that an upgrade might be in the offing. Question is, does the iBASSO DX260 offer a worthwhile purchase? Is it worth splashing out on a device that you might expect to last another 9, 10 years or so? In music terms, I played the Doves' Universal Want from the album of the same name at 24-bit 96K, and I hooked up my Sendy Ava headphones. In comparison to the AK120, the iBASSO DX260 offered a stronger, more threatening suite of lower frequencies. Deeper, more resonant bass emanated from the piano. Bass guitar provided a trim focus, making it agile and nippy, but with enough impact to impress. In upper frequency terms, it was easier to pick apart the reverb from the lead vocal, and that vocal was richer, more vibrant in its delivery, while the lead guitarist offered both drama and power. The soundstage itself was infused with air. I was expecting a little bit more, I have to say, but even so, the improvement was still there, while the soundstage was much larger with the iBASSO. It was grander. Musicians had more room to roam around now, more room to perform. Synths, for example, almost had a cinematic presentation. I then turned to a more recent vintage in terms of DAPs and the ASTEL&KERN Kann Alpha and switched to my Pentacon-armed Sennheiser 660S headphones, and I played the quite brilliant Step Right Up from Tom Waits and his album Small Change, again at 24-bit 96K. This is basically a jazz track with percussion, sax, upright bass, and that voice, of course. And on a quick tangent, as the man says himself in this song, the large print giveth, the small print taketh away. Remember that. In performance terms, there was a lowering of the noise floor on this one. The lead vocal offered a boost in clarity, while the same offered a precise delivery. Meanwhile, I felt bass had a stronger impact with greater focus, while the soundstage was impressively wide. Now on this track, I heard occasional spot vocal noises, sort of deep in the mix, and they were easier to hear than the Kann Alpha. Hence, transparency was pretty impressive here. The ear was able to push right through to the rear of the mix. Finally, I kept the Kann Alpha in place, switched back to single-ended mode, and brought in a pair of higher-end Sennheiser HD 800s, although I had to use a converter for the 800s because those 800s normally use a 6.35mm plug, and the iBASSO doesn't have a socket to cope with that. Even so, I played Nick Drake's Pink Moon and the title track from that, again at 96K. This track presented an acoustic guitar and voice, and a slice of piano and naught else for my viewers in Leeds and Sheffield and Bradford and Wakefield. And first thing that hit me here was focus. There was a clear delivery of this song to the ear. Now at one point in this song, Drake repeated the title Pink Moon over and over, and this DAP provided a clear and precise delivery of those words. They were accurately expressed and easy to hear. So that low noise performance also helped. Of course, Drake's vocal emphasis was accurate here. That is, when Drake added a smidgen of extra power or emphasis, you could hear the energy in that effort, and the piano as well showed welcome accuracy and precision. And that's basically the review of the iBASSO DX260. Let me give you a few final thoughts. I will give you some pros and cons, and in addition, a rating. The iBASSO DX260 performs very well indeed. I am impressed with the sound quality and the overall sonic performance. Now, parts of the hardware design and the software implementation did irritate me, and I had to consider whether those irritations were strong enough to affect my overall thoughts and the final rating. I decided that the emotion I felt during this review mainly occurred at the beginning of the user experience, while I was getting to know this machine. Now, there's room for improvement here, but I really think it would be cruel of me to overly penalize the DX260 because of those initial grumpy irritations. After all, once you get to know this machine over a day or so, then you will have many happy years of trouble-free use from this box, I'm sure. Ultimately then, the precision, the clarity and transparency from the mids and treble, that large soundstage, that meaty, rich impact of bass, all of that won me over and calmed my ire. Well made, solid and easy to use when you get to know it, the iBASSO provides a quality sonic performance that should provide a solid mobile music source for many years to come. Pros and cons. And in the good section, we have a rich bass. There was a good low end, and that performed well amongst the broad soundstage. I was also very happy with the clarity, and in conjunction with that, the transparency from the overall sound. The sound here was impressive, detail flooded towards the ear. I was also very happy with that thumb wheel. It was a very natural user experience, that thumb wheel. One of my favorite little tools on this particular DAP. In the bad section, well, the software interface does need a tweak, but a quick start guide would help in that respect, and I think it would solve that problem. Plus, there are hardware interface issues in terms of button labeling and that kind of thing, but once you get used to the actual DAP itself, and it'll take an hour or 3 to do so, again, that won't be so much of a problem. So that doesn't put me off giving this DAP an award, and I think I will. I'm going to give it an 8 and a groovy. Well done and congratulations to iBASSO. And that's it, folks. Thank you very much for staying to the end of this video. Before you go, can you click down yonder the like and subscribe buttons? If you want to know more about the iBASSO, if you want to buy one, I will put a link down below and you can knock yourself out and get 1 or 7. Have a great time, and I'm sure you will have a great time with this particular DAP. Down below, further down, there are other links to my website, my Facebook group, you're welcome to join, and my Patreon page as well. Every week I have an exclusive Hi-Fi News Etc. video to Patreon supporters, and in there includes Hi-Fi News, of course, plus music, trivia, hints and tips, and other stuff. Check it out. I'll be back on Saturday with a music alerts video, and in that video it will tell you what physical material I've received in the post this week. I'm talking about vinyl, CDs, books and all that gear. Anyway, hope to have your company there, and if not, the following Sunday there'll be another hi-fi review. Hope to have your company for that one at least. Anyway, until then folks, bye bye for now.